Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a superhero review. And today we'll be having a look at a film called Boy Wonder. Now let's get one thing straight. This isn't a superhero film, but I'm going to include it in the superhero playlist. And there's reasons for that. This is a similar sort of tale to the likes of Kick-Ass, Super, or even The Punisher. And the reason why I'm including it in my sort of superhero movie playlist, because it does share some of those sensibilities. Although this if I had to describe this film in any other way, it's basically a psychological thriller. Now I'll come on to that again in just a little bit, but let me give you a brief summary of the plot. Now there will be some mild spoilers here, but there are some major spoilers that I won't talk about. So I'm going to give you a couple of minor spoilers in this, but I'm not going to be talking about any of the major plot twists. So this film follows the story of a young student called Sean, who is a very shy and introverted kid, and basically he witnessed his mother being brutally murdered in front of his eyes when he was a young age. Now, he's obviously grown up with issues regarding that, and what he's kind of doing basically is, I mean, he's a straight A student. He's obviously extremely intelligent. Doesn't really have any sort of friends or social life or anything like that. All he's doing basically is studying, learning chemistry. He's not a particularly athletic type, but he's working out a lot. He does boxing and sort of kickboxing classes and things like that. So although he looks fairly scrawny, he's kind of he's deceptively combat ready, and he basically kind of goes on a vigilante mission to those sort of like people who are sort of violent offenders, and he's kind of he starts off with the kind of like your muggers and things like this, and drug dealers, that type of sort of level, and it's really he's being fueled by this sort of trauma that happened in his past, and ultimately what he wants to do is find the person responsible ultimately for his mother's death. Now he's kind of almost been adopted by this sort of police station who is the kind of the old police chief who was there when he was brought in by as a young boy initially, and is kind of hangs around the sort of the police station, and they kind of just let him do his thing. And then what you've got a new a sort of new transfer, this female sort of police officer who's been transferred to this homicide department, and she doesn't obviously know the past with him, so she kind of questions what he's doing there, and she's just been transferred there hot off the case of this kind of like sort of gangster type, sort of high profile gangster, who's kind of like looking like he's going to get off fairly easy in the courts because he's kind of like wax and palms and stuff, and she sort of develops a little bit of a bond with him, and she kind of starts to suspect that maybe he is this sort of vigilante. There's a couple of killings that have happened, and she sort of starts to suspect that he's like this vigilante. Now, this is a really, really interesting film, a really fantastically acted, fantastically directed for obviously a modest budget. One of the most interesting things is this very complicated relationship he had with his father. Now, this is what I mean by slightly mild spoilers. When you first see this film, the father seems like he's a genuinely good dad, and he's really sort of trying, and he's obviously aware that there's this trauma that's happened in his life. A little bit later, we find out that the father used to be a heavy drinker and used to be abusive when he was younger, back around the time when Sean's mother was killed, and we see some flashbacks of him basically sort of hurting the mother and him. So it's kind of a paradox really, because now he appears to be a lot more stable, and he's you know, he's sort of he looks like he's genuinely sorry for his past actions, and he's given up the booze and everything like that. But obviously, you know, he used to be, you know, a terrible father. And I won't go too much further into the plot because, you know, if you haven't seen it, I'd really recommend watching it. It's a very, very interesting film. But basically, it's the story is his continuing sort of quest, if you like, into trying to find out the identity of his mother's killer, and this police summons sort of increasing suspicion of that he might actually be this vigilante that's kind of that it's been sort of like spotted a few times. So why say this is a superhero film? Well, it isn't, as I say, really a superhero film, but it does follow that sort of tragic past and then a kind of a you know, the sort of like the road to sort of being a vigilante, much like many superheroes. But this is played completely straight in a completely realistic way. So it's unfair almost to sort of make light of it and call it a superhero film, but because it follows that similar path. This is why I'm including it in this superhero playlist. He does kind of wear a costume. He doesn't wear exactly a costume per se, but he always sort of dresses in black, and you know, he sort of paints his face, so it kind of looks a little bit like a costume. You know, he is a vigilante, and you know, it is very sort of like a, you know, a similar sort of almost like an origin story to things like the Punisher or Batman and that kind of stuff. But if you're a superhero fan, I think it's worth watching this film because I think you will enjoy it that much more because you've seen this story done in these kind of fantastic sort of, you know, colourful sort of scenarios. It's interesting watching it as a sort of, you know, a totally somber and serious way. I mean, we say, like, a lot of people say, you know, Kick-Ass was the sort of what would this happen in real life if superheroes did this in real life. This is a much better example, I think, of what actually happens, because you really do feel this guy is kind of messed up, but at the same time you're sort of there with him, and he's not like you know, like messed up. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's perfectly lucid and kind of knows what he's doing, but he's obviously got these massive traumas in it. So I really think this film, if you're a superhero fan or just a fan of the sort of like the thriller and the psychological stuff, totally check out this film. The acting, I have to say, is absolutely top notch right across the board. There's no particular big actors in here. There's a couple of sort of familiar faces that you'll see of like maybe character actors and things like that, but no one of any, you know, any particular star power, to be honest with you. But it's a fantastic script. It's well directed. I think the cast are fantastic. If I had to pick a fault in this film, two minor faults I would say with this film for me personally. Sometimes when there are fights, especially the first fight where he's fighting these two drug dealers, that looked a little bit not particularly well sort of directed and sort of choreographed. It looked kind of like people fake fighting. But that was it. The later fights look a lot better than that and look very brutal. But I think just maybe the first one didn't look particularly realistic to me, I thought. A minor quibble, I have to say, though. And the only other one I had, and this is really more of a taste thing to me, the film has quite a lot of almost flashbacks and almost kind of bits where he's imagining it. And sometimes it's a bit hard to tell which parts are actually happening and which parts are maybe a flashback or a kind of something that he's imagining. It doesn't happen all that often, but there's just a couple of scenes where I think, did that actually happen or did he just imagine that happened? So to there, it's got a great ending, but it's really one where you have to have been paying attention. You really have to have like listened in the film to be able to pick up on it. So I'd recommend, if you watch this film, really make sure you pay attention to the dialogue and things like that, because it kind of it's an easy thing to miss, and you maybe might catch it the first time if you're kind of just not watching it properly. But a fantastic film. I really enjoyed it. Going to give this one an 8.5 out of 10. Check it out if you're a fan of the kind of like your Vigilante, or just you want a good drama film, basically. There you go, 8.5 out of 10. Have you seen it? Let me know what you think. And would you see this film? I mean, you may have clicked on it and not heard of it before. And has my description made you really want to see it? Leave me a comment. I look forward to seeing you next time. See you later.